Welcome to Bedtime Sleep Stories with Lana. I'm Lana, and I'm so happy to have you here tonight. Imagine this: the soft patter of rain against your window, a cozy blanket wrapped around you, and a story that carries you gently into sleep. Tonight, we're stepping into the timeless wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, exploring the idea of duty not as a burden, but as a quiet strength that guides us through life's storms. So, settle in, take a deep breath, and let the rain wash away the day as we begin this 30-minute journey together. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast golden field. The sky above is a deep gray, heavy with clouds, and a gentle rain begins to fall, tapping softly on the earth. The air smells fresh, alive with the scent of wet grass and distant wood smoke, and there's a stillness that feels both ancient and comforting. In the distance, you see a figure, a man dressed in simple robes, his face weathered but kind. He carries a staff, and as he approaches, you feel a strange sense of calm, as if he's someone you've always known. "Welcome," he says, his voice steady like the rain. "I'm Arjun. I've been waiting for you." You tilt your head, curious, and he smiles faintly. Not the Arjun you might be thinking of, not the warrior from the old tales, at least not tonight. "I'm just a man, like you, who once stood at a crossroads, unsure of what duty really means. Come, walk with me. Let me tell you a story." You follow him, your feet sinking slightly into the damp earth, the rain a soft rhythm in your ears. The field stretches endlessly, dotted with wild flowers, purple and yellow blooms, glistening like tiny lanterns under the droplets. Arjun begins to speak, his words weaving a tale that feels both distant and close to home. "Long ago," he says, "I was a farmer. My days were simple, tending the fields, caring for my family, watching the seasons turn. My wife Lila would hum by the fire as our daughter Sita chased fireflies in the dusk. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. A quiet rhythm of planting and harvesting, of laughter and small joys. Then one year, the rains didn't come. The earth cracked, the crops withered, and my village began to fade. People looked to me not because I was the strongest or the wisest, but because I'd always been the one to step forward when things got hard. They called it duty. I called it survival." You glance at him, noticing the way his eyes soften as he remembers. The rain falls a little heavier now, a soothing drum beat that seems to echo his words. "I didn't know what to do," he continues. "I could stay and fight for a harvest that might never grow, or I could leave, take my family somewhere new, where the rivers still flowed. Every choice felt like a betrayal of the land that had fed us, of the people who trusted me, of myself and all I'd built. Have you ever felt that, torn between what you want and what you're supposed to do?" You nod, almost without thinking. Maybe it's not a drought you've faced, but there's something familiar in his struggle. Those moments when you've stared at a late-night clock, weighing a decision that keeps you awake, wondering if you're letting someone down. Arjun stops walking and turns to you, the rain glistening on his face. "That's when he came to me," he says. "Krishna. Not a god in a chariot, not some grand figure from the sky, just a friend. sitting under a tree, waiting for me to stop pacing. You imagine it now, a lone banyan tree in the field, its gnarled roots twisting into the earth, its broad leaves bending under the rain. Beneath it sits a man with a quiet smile, his dark eyes reflecting the storm, his presence steady as the trunk itself. Krishna didn't tell me what to choose, Arjun says. Didn't promise me rain or a miracle. He just sat there, his hands resting on his knees, and asked me one question. What is it that you're really fighting for? I stood there, the wind tugging at my robe, and thought about my fields, my family, the village. I realized it wasn't about the land itself. It was about the life it held. Lila's laughter as she braided Sita's hair, Sita's tiny hands tugging at my robe, the neighbors who'd shared their last bread with us. Duty wasn't the work I did, it was the why behind it. He pauses, his gaze distant, as if he's back under that tree. I told him. I didn't know if I could keep going, Arjun says. The doubt was heavy, like stones in my chest. Krishna leaned forward then, his voice low, and said, "The fruit of your work isn't yours to hold, just the work itself. Let go of the rest." I didn't understand it fully, not then, but it felt like a knot loosening, like the rain washing away something I'd carried too long. The rain softens, a gentle mist settling over the field, and you feel your shoulders relax as Arjun's words sink in. "So, what did you do?" you ask, your voice blending with the sound of the droplets. He chuckles, a low warm sound. "I stayed," he says, "not because I had to, but because I chose to. I dug wells with the others, my hands blistered and aching, shared what little we had, sometimes just a handful of millet, and waited for the rains. They came eventually, great torrents that turned the dust to rivers, filling the cracks with life again. But even if they hadn't, I'd made my peace. Duty isn't about winning. It's about showing up day after day, even when the sky stays silent." You walk on together, the field giving way to a small village. Mud brick houses line a winding path, their roofs glistening under the rain. Lanterns glow faintly in the windows, casting golden pools on the wet ground, and you hear the distant murmur of voices, families settling in for the night, a child's giggle carried on the breeze. Arjun gestures toward a house at the edge of the path. "That was mine," he says. "Come, rest a while." You step inside and the air is warm, scented with earth, wood smoke, and a hint of dried herbs hanging in bundles from the rafters. A simple mat lies on the floor beside a low table where a clay cup steams with herbal tea. You sit, feeling the weight of the day slip away, and sip the tea, its warmth spreading through you like a quiet hug, tasting faintly on the roof, a lullaby that soothes your mind. Arjun sits across from you, his staff resting against the wall. "The Bhagavad Gita," he says, "isn't just an old story. It's about us, about you. It's about those nights when you lie awake, wondering if you're doing enough. If you're enough." Krishna told me something else that day. Do what you can with what you have where you are. That's duty. Not perfect, not grand, just real. You lean back, letting his words settle over you like the rain outside. Maybe you think of your own life, those quiet battles no one sees, the overtime you worked to pay the bills, the call you made to a friend who needed it. the mornings you got up despite the weight in your chest. It's not always easy, Arjun adds, his voice softer now. Some days, I wanted to walk away. Lila saw it in my eyes. She'd take my hand and say, "Stay, just for today," and I did. There's a strength in staying, in doing the small things. The dishes, the kind word, the extra hour when you're tired. That's where the real story happens. He pauses, then leans forward, his gaze steady. Each morning, I'd wake before dawn, fetch water, and share it with the village, even when my own throat was dry. One evening, I carried a jug to old Mira, who'd fallen ill. Her hands trembled as she took it, but she smiled and said, "You didn't have to." I told her I did, because we were in it together. That's what kept me going, those little acts, day after day. Duty isn't just one big choice, it's the quiet rhythm of showing up. You nod, picturing the village, holding on through small kindnesses. Let me tell you about old Ravi, the miller, Arjun continues. When the drought hit, he lost everything. His grain dried up, his mill wheel stopped turning. Everyone thought he'd leave, but he didn't. He started grinding what little the others had, even when his hands shook from hunger. I asked him why, and he said, "If I go, who'll keep the flour coming?" That was his duty, not to the mill, but to us. He taught me it's not the size of the task, but the heart you put into it. Night. Arjun says, I found him by the riverbank, staring at the dry bed. He'd dreamed of water rushing through, loud as thunder, but when he woke, it was still dust. "I keep going anyway," he said, "not for the dream, but for the day it might come true." That stuck with me. Duty as an act of faith, not just in the rain, but in each other. And so our story fades into the night, the rain a distant echo as you sink deeper into calm. I hope Arjun's journey brought you a little peace, a little light to carry into your dreams. Thank you for listening. Now let yourself relax. Close your eyes and let beautiful dreams guide you into a peaceful night. I'm Lana, and I'll see you again in the next story.